Hello, friends, and welcome to the 9th part of the Wisdom of Christ series. This is a slow class, and with a somewhat simple message. Jesus is saying a whole lot in the Bible. It's not everything he said that's written in the Bible, but maybe some of the most important things, some of the wisdom about life and about faith that he's sharing. Come down on your mat, resting. Maybe with your feet on the mat, but knees bended and your knees kind of hugging in so they're stabilizing each other. If you like to feel your breath, you can definitely put your hands on your belly just to feel your inhale and exhale, lifting your hands up and down. But maybe it's nice today to take your hands above your head, palms facing up. Now this is supposed to make you feel comfortable, so if it doesn't, please listen to your own feelings and do something else. Checking in with your body. Are you tired? Are you awake? Ready? Are you hungry? Or maybe you just feel like your heart is racing out and it's like you can't calm yourself. Whatever it might be, positive or negative, let's let it go and give it up to God if that makes sense to you. Right now, sigh out and be with what is just at this moment. So maybe you inhale God's presence. Or maybe you inhale love if that works better for you. Please stay down on your mat, eyes closed and face relaxed, and listen for some Jesus or Christ wisdom. It's from Matthew 7. So Jesus is saying, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundations on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who builds his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the wind blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash." Maybe you picture this imagery in your mind. Now take your hands down and hug your knees in towards your chest. I don't think I need to explain a whole lot about the purpose or the meaning of this small parable. So the wisdom here challenge us to think about what our lives builds on. The rock or the sand. Welcome to stretch your legs up and maybe do some circles with your wrists or moving your feet, toes, kind of waving for them back there. And then hug in your knee joints and roll forth and back until you come into a seated position. And maybe in a comfortable seated position, lean forward, letting go of your head, sway from side to side like the wind. Come onto your right side and lift your left arm up, reaching over your head. And opposite side, stretching tall and long. And then take your hands behind you, supporting your lower back, lifting your chest up, kind of broadening in front of your shoulders. Gaze up. And let go. Find your tabletop. So take your legs back behind you. Maybe you come onto a double pointed mat for the sake of your knees. It's not that a difficult thing we're going to do here. We're not going to stay here that long. Take your right leg up and bend your knee. Flex your foot, closing up your hip. And then draw your knee underneath your belly. Moving your spine up. Keeping your knee bended 90 degrees. And just move a little bit here. Maybe with your breath, inhale. Create length, flat back. Exhaling as you squeeze in. 2 more times. Inhaling. Exhaling in. And land the knee, preparing yourself for the opposite side. Take a look at the knee and hip alignment here with the legs standing on the mat. Don't move your hip way out of proper alignment. Bend the knee, flatten your back, navel in. And again, round your back like a cat pose here. Inhaling, creating length. Exhaling, moving your spine up. Three more times. Make sure you breathe. Last time. Knee down. Maybe you do something with your wrists here. Downward facing dog. Spreading out your fingers, hip up and back. Make sure you have 2 fists wide distance in between your feet before you start moving one leg at the time. Now the obvious question also with this imagery is that how do I know if I built my life on sand that will blow away or on the rock? According to Jesus and his wisdom, it's about listening in. So the first part saying, therefore, everyone who has ears to hear these words of mine and put them into practice. So it's about listening to more of Jesus' wisdom, according to Jesus himself. Then you'll build your house on the rock. Now move your feet to the top end of the mat. Take a hold of your elbows, small bend in your knees, and just wave from side to side. So what is it that Jesus wants us to do? Well, first of all, I think it's have faith. And then it's loving our neighbor as ourselves. And if you're in the beginning of your path with faith, maybe you'll begin by practicing stuff, and then faith will grow as you practice loving people, loving yourself. And then eventually I think our faith in God will grow as well. Now move into mountain pose, standing tall. Side out, whatever you need to side out. Make a big circle. Inhale your arms up above your head. Palms meet. Exhaling, kind of taking your hands softly down by your side. Let's do that a few more times. Inhaling, closing your eyes as you move your arms up. Exhaling, drawing your arms down. And continue a little bit more. As soft as you can be in your body, your knees even. Big belly breath. One last time through. Now on our mat, we stand on a firm foundation. At least I hope you do. Step your right leg back. Now having a lunge pose that we're going to do now. So bend your front knee and stretch out the back leg as much as possible, reaching your arms up. Now this pose, trust me, I have tried, is pretty hard to do in sand or on some uneven ground. You will fall. So also here in a yoga practice, we need a steady foundation. Maybe not a rock, but a steady foundation to be able to practice our yoga safely, but also to get all the benefits of the things that we're doing here. So I think so many ways in our lives we need a firm foundation, but in our modern culture, everything is fluid. Everything is changing, nothing is constant. But I truly believe that we need that in our lives, to practice our lives as well as practice yoga. Now take your hands down on the mat in front of you and take the back foot a little bit closer and lift your right leg up. Now you can stay with your fingers down here, or you can draw your hands a little bit closer to your foot and lift up your right leg. You don't need to close your hip, just lift it up. Now you might know three-legged dog, where we have a hip opener. Try to go for the same thing here, even though we're standing. So bend your knee and lift your right leg up as high as you can, folding forward. It's a little bit of a creative pose here. One more breath. And then soften your knees. Now slowly take this right leg to meet the left foot. Either feet together and knees, or just one part that works best for your thighs. Sink back in your chair pose. Reaching your arms up. We're going to do a twist, but not the traditional twist. Take your palms together. Now make sure your hip here is aligned with the short end on the mat, and it somewhat stays in that direction. Also, as you move your shoulders to your left side, palms still in prayer pose. So no leaning forward, just twisting. And of course, you can sit lower if you like. But even knees, navel in, shoulders down. Stay here for just a moment more. Let go. Stretch your legs. Take your right leg, cross it on top of the other. If this is too much, you might use a block in front of you as you lean forward. Now the floor can be really far away here if your hamstrings are tight. But into a forward fold. Your forehead reaches towards your shin or knee or whatever works for you. If you feel this is not comfortable, just do a traditional forward fold with however wide distance in between your feet as you like. Coming a little bit more into the front of the foot. Maybe feel it a little bit more on the lower back and on the hamstrings. Now release. See if you can uncross your legs here. Step back, down dog. Stretch out your spine. Lift your tailbone a little bit up higher and make sure you bend your knees to stretch that back so you don't round the back like I do now. I see a lot of people doing like this. All right? So take a look at the screen if you're unsure what I mean. This is different than this one. And maybe your pose will be more with knees bended, but your spine is straight. Either stay here and focus on your breath, or do a small Vinyasa, which means the plank. Elbows squeezing back, shoulders a little bit in front of your fingers, just lower down on knees or toes, on the belly, lifting up your chest, cobra, or if you're up for it, up dog, downward facing dog. Try to move your hip, sway your hip gently from side to side. How does that feel? Now again, walk your feet to the top end of the mat. Spread out your toes. Hopefully that feels good. And then move into your mountain. Standing tall. If you feel like loosening up a little bit, do that. I think I heard someone say that building a house on the sand is probably really, really beautiful. I mean, just picture it. A house just on the beach. You open the doors in the morning, you see the sea, you hear the birds. It's probably really, really beautiful. So there is some benefits by building your house, at least at first, on the sand. But when the wind comes, when life happens, then you notice that the sand is not stable to hold you. Take your left leg and move it back. High lunge again this time, the sequence on the other side. Bend quite a bit down in the front knee. Again, pelvis underneath yourself as much as you can. Let the air come in and out through your nose. Acknowledge how your leg is feeling at the moment, if you feel any stretching happening on your hip flexors. Probably you do. And then lean forward, navel in, as you let your fingers reach down. Now back foot a little bit closer and walk your hands even further to the front end of the foot. Lift the left leg up. Now we did this before. Let your forehead reach further down towards your shin or whatever works for you. Lift your left leg even higher up. Bending the knee, opening out your hips. So it's somewhat maybe the sensation of a half moon pose, but we're doing a forward fold here. If you feel any pinching in the hip flexors on the standing leg, don't fold that much forward. Breathe. One more breath. And gently let go. Again, the feet are meeting each other, or just the knees, whatever is suitable for your body. Chair pose. You can definitely take a breath or two before you sink down. Checking your posture. You're not standing on the top end of or the ball of the foot there. You're not standing on your heel, trying to distribute the weight. Knees aligned with the short end of the mat and hips also. Palms together. Now take a look at your arm here. Some are doing a prayer pose like this. Take your hands down in a horizontal line. Core involvement, and then you twist to your right side. Push your palms together. Notice where your shoulders are. I think a lot of us tend to move our shoulders up here, so take them down. And maybe taking this back hip a little bit further to the front if you kind of squeeze too much to the side. And then to center. With a big side out. Stand up. That felt good for my leg. Left leg crosses, or if it didn't work before with a forward fold, just regular stance. Lean forward. Taking it slow. And stay here as you breathe. Again, notice the weight distribution on your feet. You can move your hip a little bit more to your left side to see if that feels different. Maybe a little bit more to the front without falling on your head. And then see if you can undo yourself here. Step back. And then child's pose. Get some distance in between the knees. Hip moves back. And forehead on the mat or just on your hands. So are you building your life on the rock or on sand? Careers, money, success, all of that can so easily be something that we strive for. Maybe the right body, something that becomes the main thing in our lives, the most important. But I believe that stuff like that is like building your house on sand. And so often we don't realize that we have started building our lives on sand. Maybe it's approval, whatever it might be. What comes first in your life? Is it love? As I believe is the rock. Love for God and love for our neighbors and ourselves. I'm not asking you all these things to judge you. I'm just asking because sometimes we need to be honest with ourselves. We cannot change if we are not aware of what's going on. Now come up on tabletop and move a little bit freely. We're gonna do a little bit of core strength now. A little bit of a time since I've done this, I think last time. So it's actually a side plank. You can take your left elbow, or if you prefer, your hand down. Make sure though that the elbow or the hand is somewhat underneath the shoulder, pushing the mat away down into the foundation. Now the easiest way to do this is having your knee on the mat, but you can try to come up on your toes, stacking your toes or your feet. We're going to stay here for just a bit. Gaze on the ground if it's hard to keep your balance. If you want to play with this tilted tree version or whatever, go ahead. And even though you might be shaking, but wobbling a little bit, stay here. And then come down. Letting go of that double mat, always do that. And all the way down on the side. Now this shoulder and hand is on the floor here in front of you. Take the other hand behind you and try to stay on a straight line as much as you can. Now lift your head and shoulder up and lift this top leg up as well. And then lower down. Maybe it's just halfway. Maybe it's all the way. Just a few of these crunches in here. In our core. No rush. And if your hip tends to lean a little bit back as you lift up your leg, that's okay. It's almost impossible to lift up here with your hip bones directly on stacked. 2 more times. Awesome. Roll onto your belly. Stack your hands, rest your forehead, and relax. We are going to do the other side as well. I don't know in the country where you live, but here in Denmark, we have what we call a crisis when you turn either 40 or 30, depending. Let's just get into a side plank and then I can share a little bit more. Again, alignment, knee on the mat, or come out on your feet here. Now, the reason I think we called it a crisis is because when we're young, we're so into success and all of these things. And then all of a sudden we realize, boy, I built my life on sand. What is the rock? I think often the crisis in life is like that. Or when somebody dies or something horrible happens, all of a sudden it's like, what's going on? Hold it just a little bit more. And sink down. So sometimes things have to happen before we realize what we are building our lives on. But why not try to work the things out before crisis happens, so that when the wind blows against our houses, it will actually stand. Top leg lifted, point your toes. And when you lift up, core involvement. And how high you go here is definitely debatable. Go as high as you feel like. We're just doing 3, 2, and the last one. If you feel this in your neck, I do a little bit. It's because we are holding our head with just small muscles in our neck, and that might cause a little bit of tension. Roll onto your belly again. Probably you're still watching the screen. I've just turned on my mat. Forehead on the mat as well, or on the ground, or your hands. Back bending in cobra pose, or something else that you really like. Hands somewhere here in front of you. Preferably wider than your shoulders, because that helps our shoulders to stay down and back. I would also encourage you to relax your thighs, your buttocks. If you feel a little bit tired in your arms from what we have been doing, that's very understandable. If you want to play with this pose a little bit more, you can bend your knees, point your toes up, just to notice how that feels. That will engage your buttocks and your hamstrings though, so just be aware of what's going on. And lower down. Spinal twist on the back, so come back here. The deepest stretch will be crossing the leg. You can take your left leg on top of your right, or just stack your knees like this, directly beside each other, and roll onto your right side. Either way, if you're crossed or not, hips here stacked, and then it's not that important that this arm is actually reaching down on the floor. If you're pretty flexible, that will happen, but maybe you just need to try to relax this top shoulder as much out to the side as possible. In the yogi tradition, or yoga philosophy, you have a term called Maya, which is a false illusion. And in some philosophies, it's about, you do yoga actually to realize, what is this Maya? What is this false things that you are pursuing or living for? And then letting go of that, detaching. And I'm not saying that Jesus is teaching yoga philosophy. I'm just saying that there are some aspects there that we can draw lines to. Because I think here Jesus is challenging us to say, hey, are you actually doing Maya? Are you actually persuading yourself that you're building your house on a rock? But if you're not listening to my wisdom, then you are building your life on sand. You think it's on the rock, but it's not. Come back on your back. Take a breath as you're resting on your mat. And then move to the other side. Again, either crossing the legs or stacking your knees, your legs, all the way out. Taking your time, relaxing both your legs, quads, your buttocks, your lower back, shoulders, and face. So all of us, if we experience that our houses were or is built on sand, let's rebuild. Let's tear that house, beach house, I was about to say, down and build on the rock. And let's ask Jesus for wisdom to build our lives on truth, on love, and not egoistic motivations. Motivations centered about my own needs. Come back. And now it can be really great, I think, to hug the knees in. Not lifting up your bum, but is lowering down this lower part of your back. Maybe even massaging it with some small moves from side to side. Now, if you want to rest on the mat, you can do that. I will sit up and conclude this class with a prayer. So please come down on the mat and put a timer or just stay for however long you feel is the right thing for you. Resting pose is with the feet out to the side and your palms facing up, but hands still resting down on the floor. Maybe feeling the floor laying down or seated underneath you as the rock, a firm foundation. And if you feel like praying with me, you don't have to have a huge faith to pray. Just say yes somehow in your spirit. So Christ, I pray for your wisdom to build our houses on the sand. Not on what is just here and now and insecure things, but build our houses on what is true, what is righteous, and what is love. Reveal to us if our houses are built on sandy beaches that will erode or blow down with a big noise when the wind comes. We invite you to be the foundation. We invite you to speak to our hearts, bodies, and minds. Amen. You know you can stay on the mats, but I'll finish the video now from my heart to your heart. Blessings on your path, and may you build your house on the rock. And as always, Thank you for helping me share these videos so other people can build their houses on the rock as well.